Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Earth Twister, and today we're talking about my thoughts for the Agents of Shield Marvel Champions campaign expansion box. Now, there's a lot of cool things in here that I really enjoyed, but there's also a couple of things that drove me a little crazy, and we're gonna get into it. First off, to start off with, you have two new heroes and five new villains. Standard for any campaign expansion box in Marvel Champions. To be honest, the heroes didn't really excite me that much. Playing through both of them, which I've played through Nick Fury on the channel already, Maria Hill, a few videos will be coming along the way, but they just didn't really click with the way that I wanted to play. They were fun to an extent, and I'm sure that they play well for some other people, but the way I like to play, it wasn't really for me. Nick Fury was probably more fun to me than Maria Hill. Maria felt like you just play her the same way every single time, whereas Nick Fury felt like you could probably change up his deck more than I did. And I feel like I may enjoy Nick Fury more along the lines as I build for him differently. Maybe the same with Maria Hill. I haven't really given her much of a shot, but she's just not been that interesting to me, even sort of from the get go, just trying to play her. And we're going to get a little bit more into them as we go. And one thing that has really excited me about this campaign box that I'm glad that they did is the inclusion of the executive board evidence as well as the Shield executive board. Throughout the entire campaign, it feels like you're playing Clue, and they're not useless cards after you get done playing the campaign because you use them when you play against Baron Zemo. It feels like in most of the campaign expansion boxes that we've gotten, we usually get things like we get things like missions from Age of Apocalypse, or we get some campaign specific upgrades from the different other boxes. And those upgrades, while they're great and can be fun for the campaign that you're playing, they become dead cards, useless cards, cards that you just keep in your box that you don't ever really pull out because you're playing a varied game with just one of the villains rather than trying to go through the scenario, the campaign with all five villains. So you're not really working through the campaign, and it ends up being more work to get those cards out than it is worth using them. And that's one thing that I really like that they did in Age of Apocalypse using the prelates and the overseers. I really appreciate that they did that. I feel like including that in a campaign specifically was really, really good. And that's what I like about using the evidence cards in the Shield executive board for the Baron Zemo campaign or the Baron Zemo scenario because it brings a level of okay, every single card in this box is worth it. It's part of the game. It makes it more fun to me and it makes me feel like I'm getting my money's worth rather than just buying some random cards that I'll never use again. And I say that because I typically don't play the campaigns over and over again. I might play a villain from the campaigns, but usually it's one-off villains that I'll fight rather than entire campaign. Now, Black Widow was a ton of fun. I enjoyed playing through against her as Nick Fury. It was a big learning experience as I'm trying to figure out the mechanics of if I'm going to allow her to remove threat so that she can trigger a preparation, or if I'm going to try to clear all the threat off before she can trigger a preparation. And it ended up being a lot of fun just trying to make that decision. And she has the standard one, two, three stages on the villain card, which was actually the only villain in this scenario that had that. She's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of variation that can happen with what's going on in her deck. It can also be a little frustrating because one of the reasons I lost one of the games for the campaign was not thinking about the preparation and realizing that the preparation that came up as I was dealing damage to her put a minion in play, and that minion absorbed all the damage and even didn't even get just defeated at that point. So it was a little frustrating, but it's scenarios like that that have a little bit of unpredictability that I appreciate because it's like I can plan, I can strategize, but I still might lose because of some form of unpredictability, which makes it feel a little bit like a more of a challenging game that doesn't depend just on my skill, but a little bit on luck as well. Batroc was a little bit different. I enjoyed playing through the way that you do with him. It kind of felt kind of like you're playing Venom, except you're not trying to get the alert level to go to a different stage like you are with the Bell. And I thought that was really fun, just the way that you play with Batroc. Modoc was really interesting. I enjoyed getting to get those allies out and trying to work around the retaliate. It wasn't too much of a problem for Nick Fury and even Maria Hill, which you'll see when I play her, especially when you get the Sarah Garza ally out. It's it's so easy. He's just a lot of fun. Now, probably one of my favorite scenarios from this campaign expansion is the Citizen 5 Thunderbolt scenario. And that's because we get a whole slew of uh, modular sets with this. We get it's like a multi-villain scenario, but done better. I feel like it was a lot of fun trying to figure out, okay, so if this minion is more damaged, they go back, or trying to figure out how I wanted to be engaged and not really knowing what was going to come next in the deck because I'm switching up the modular sets a lot. And we start with 6 Thunderbolt modular sets, and with these other hero packs coming out, we're going to be able to get more to expand and to really change up the Thunderbolts scenario a lot. And Citizen 5 was just a lot of fun taking him on and figuring out how to handle him, how to handle Jolt, and figure out that, okay, I don't want to defeat her. I would rather instead use the parlay counters and just figure out how to mitigate threat, mitigate damage, and do things like that. Now, Baron Zemo is sort of I can't say that I enjoyed him that much. He was great. He was fun, but he was really frustrating because when you're playing in expert mode, he can scheme for 4 plus a boost card, which is insane already. And then he gets the attachments. Maybe if the the shield executive board flips on you, then he gets buffed stats and 4-2, and then he goes up to a 4-2 with steady, and he gets forced interrupt where he can activate with the second boost card. It's a little insane what he can do, the amount of damage, the amount of threat. You're really gonna wanna make sure that he's confused, but then he's got steady, and so that kinda makes things difficult, and you really can't take a hit. You don't want him to scheme, but you do want him to scheme because you don't wanna take damage, and it's just a whole thing that you're trying to figure out, like, "How do I wrap my mind around this?" And it was just it was difficult for me, which I appreciate, and now I kinda have, like, this desire to go through and just try to take him on until I win. So I guess that's one thing I like about Baron Zemo, is he's a challenge and he's fun, but he's a little too difficult for my taste right now. Maybe because I just used the precons, edited Nick Fury a little bit, but I'm sure if I try to go up against Baron Zemo with a different hero that I have created a deck for, I'm sure that I will enjoy the scenario a lot more, and I'll have to do that here soon. Now let's talk about the heroes a little bit. We're going to go a little bit more in depth with them as I go through and work on their hero reviews. As I've only played Injustice for Nick Fury and Leadership for Maria Hill, but we're gonna talk a little bit about them, and we're gonna play through each of their aspects here later on the channel once I'm a little less burnt out on playing them. But Nick Fury is a really cool, pretty fun hero. I enjoy the form flipping, trying to figure out if I'm ready to attack and do some damage. It's nice to be able to flip up to hero and know that you're not going to take damage, be able to mitigate threat while you're in stealth suit. His ally is really cool. I love the mechanic that all of the cards sort of work together to add threat, use the threat, and he comes with preparations in his kit. So he feels like a stronger Black Widow, but he also has some things that he could really use some work on that would help him out a lot. And I think that's going to be coming in with deck building, how you build out around his kit and everything like that. So Nick Fury is a pretty fun hero. I can't say that he's my favorite. If I were to scale him on a scale of 1 to 10, he'd probably be like a 6. Like, I like him, but I don't love him. Now, if I were to rate Maria Hill, it would probably be something more like a 5. And it's not that I dread playing her. She's fun, she works well, I like what she does, but she's just so much the same all the time. You just play her, she wants the same things. You wanna get the Pericles out first thing. You wanna stun, you wanna confuse, you wanna get toughs. No matter what, like, you want Maria Hill to get that Pericles out basically on the first turn. And I feel like there may be some more unique things that you can do with her. I just haven't figured it out yet. Haven't played with her much. I like how much her cards center around having supports in play. And maybe All Points Bulletin becomes a really strong card if you've got a lot of shield supports in play. So I have to look at each of these things and figure out how to build for her, how to play for her. But she to me is just not as fun as I want her to be. And so that's sort of my thoughts there on the heroes and the villains. There's one other thing that I want to talk about here, and that's the amount of cards that you get for deck building. You really don't get that many new cards. And really, they're all centered around the same thing. They don't have a whole idea of how you like want to use them for something else. Like For example, what I'm thinking of is the sidekick card that you get in the Age of Apocalypse campaign box. It's perfect. It's probably one of my favorite cards in the game because you can use it in so many different ways that you build decks. With these cards, they're very specific in how you use them, that you have to build in a particular way if you're going to use them. Super Spies is, of course, only usable for Maria Hill and Nick Fury, so not really worth including in any other deck. Organizational Support, I like, but it's a resource card that I might use if I'm going to be playing somebody that's going to be playing expensive things like Maria Hill. It's great, but I don't always want to exhaust things that share a trait with me, especially with X-Men stuff. I'm not always wanting to exhaust. My favorite card, probably, or one of my favorite cards here is Front Organization. It was really helpful in trying to make sure that I didn't lose things that I didn't want to lose. I just put one into play, and it was great to just be like, we'll just get rid of it. No need to worry. I like that it could go for an ally instead because it's a location, it's a support. It says when an encounter card effect would discard a card you control, discard Front Organization instead of discarding that card. So it would work for an ally, whereas you might get caught off guard and that would just be upgrade or support, but there will be other cards that make you discard allies that are a little frustrating. But that would help mitigate that. The card that I hate in this is Agents of Shield. It's not a great card to me. It actually got me in trouble one of the times I was playing through because I canceled a card that wasn't that bad and ended up getting like a scheme and the villain just won right there. And I say it wasn't that bad, but it was bad enough that I didn't want it. I think it was like a Shadows of the Past or something, which I could have dealt with because I would just get another minion and a scheme at the time. But I ended up getting an advance and the villain just won. And it was very frustrating, very annoying. Some other cool new cards that we get, Grant Ward. I'm not too excited about him. I don't really know how to use him. He can't defend for you. I like to have my allies defend for me, but he's a very interesting character. I like that they developed these characters from the Agents of Shield TV show and included them in the comics and brought them over into this game. It's fun. It's cool. We got Slingshot, which I never had an opportunity to use her. I think maybe I did once, and it was cool being able to spend an energy resource to get her into play and then have her come back to my hand. I think that's a really cool way to use her powers. Victoria Hand, I did use. I enjoyed getting to ready a shield support, but she's not really that much more helpful. The 2 health, you only get 2 activations out of her for 3 cost. Maybe you're using her for thwart removal. That's fine. Melinda May, never really used her. I mean, I did. I got her in play, but I didn't really use her ability that much. And looking at the top of the encounter deck, maybe discarding the card is kind of helpful, but I'll have to look into how I might build with her. Maybe she works with Gambit. I don't know. Nick Fury Sr., kind of a disappointing card to play after you're so used to playing Nick Fury Jr., but he is definitely nice to include in a Nick Fury deck when you can't use Nick Fury Jr. Now, probably my favorite card is Practice Plan, and that's just because it allows you to cycle through and get your preparations as you've triggered them. That's just been really nice. It worked really, really well for Nick Fury, where they put that in his deck, and I think I would probably want to include Practice Plan in just about any deck that I'm using that has preparation cards. Now, these other cards, Informant, Prism Dust, and Intelligence, I haven't been too excited about these cards. I mean, I triggered them, I used them. I think the only one I didn't use was Informant, just because it was easy to forget about, and I was not really leaving minions in play long enough for them to be able to scheme. And then Prism Dust, I don't know, it just never was in on the table when I needed it. And then when it was on the table, I'd never get a minion. And then Intelligence, I used once or twice, and it was okay. The rest of the cards that we get, but there's still some other ones, but the rest of the cards that we get are pretty much copies of ones we already had. We had Quake and Coulson, Global Logistics, and then there's some others that I included in here. I think Sky Destroyer came with Nick Fury. Others that are in here too that I included to build into Nick Fury's deck. I enjoy Fitz and Simmons. Great cards. I feel like they're really only usable in decks that have shield and want tech. But that's the thing. I don't think you don't necessarily want to build around Fitzsimmons. You want them in a shield deck because of the fact that they're cheaper, but they get tech cards and pay for tech cards specifically, which makes you want to put them in an Iron Man deck. So I think there's just a little bit of tweaking that we need to do here with figuring out how to use Fitzsimmons in other decks and just get them to work for you the way that you want them to. They seem like great cards, but I need to figure out how to use them more. And paying 3 in an Iron Man deck is going to be too expensive, and then using them for tech in shield decks is going to be interesting since, as far as I'm aware, we don't have a whole ton of tech cards aside from what's in tech preparation cards, shield cards, aside from what's in Nick Fury's deck. Now let's talk about the big hitters, big spending cards in the Agents of Shield box. You get the big 6, maybe the big 4 that are 6 cost cards, shield supports that Maria Hill likes to use, and I like to use all of them, but it's hard to get them down when I want them. I can maybe get one down for sure at the beginning of the game, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to choose the Pericles to help me give me a chance to build a little bit. The Cersei, I didn't find as much use for, and that's because I wasn't concerned about getting allies on the table when I had the Pericles in play. The Douglas was helpful at times, though it only removes 2 threat, but it at least allowed me to mitigate stuff as I was going. The Bellerophon and the Pericles, probably the 2 best of those supports, and just in practical use, those 2 helped me the most. Yeah, and there's nothing really new here. We got some reskins for our Genius, Energy, and Strength, which is kind of cool. But, I don't know. I didn't really care for them that much. I thought the X-Men ones were fine with the Avengers ones, but I think it's cool that they do update the art. All in all, though, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. campaign box, I would say, is a lot of fun. I would say 100% get it if you are interested in some new fun scenarios to play against. If you are concerned about the funness of the heroes, you're looking for new heroes, maybe not so much maybe not getting this campaign box so much because to me the heroes just aren't really worth it for themselves. They're fun and they're exciting because they're new, but I don't feel like I'm going to be playing them as much as the rest of the heroes that I have. Like I'm thinking of Domino, X-23, some of those heroes that I really like to play over and over and over again. And definitely for deck building, I wouldn't say that Agents of Shield has a great amount of cards or a great gift, I guess, to deck building. There's not a whole ton of new cards, and the ones that are new aren't necessarily the best for things outside of Shield decks. Shield is cool. Shield is fun. It's not really the way that I like to play. So I'm not super excited about these cards, and I may not use them as much as the next person. Maybe that's my personal opinion, but I feel like that's just the way it is with this campaign box. Yes, and if you are looking at wanting some new, very fun villains to play against, 100% get it. You have 5 fantastic scenarios here to play, and they are wonderful. They're great. I would say that out of all of the villain scenarios that I have played, these are probably 5 of my favorite. Probably in the top 10, all of them, if not the top 15. They're great scenarios, decent heroes, not great cards for deck building, unless you are looking at building shield decks. And in that case, too, there's not a whole lot of new shield stuff than what we already got in Sinister Motives. So if you're looking at Legacy, maybe it's not necessarily worth it, but I suppose if you are looking at the current environment, it might be worth getting because you do get repeats of cards that you get in Sinister Motives. Those are my thoughts. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree in the comments below. And there goes my camera. And let's have a great discussion down in the comments below what you guys think about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we'll see you guys in the next one.